Hello, hello.
Well, hi, friends.
It's been a while.
It's been a hot minute, but we have been working our buns off.
Yeah, for those about you who are our regular listeners who come every week to check us out, we had a week off last week. Sorry. We were so busy that we needed to just take a week.
Well, I would say we didn't have a week off. We were
No, we
actually
didn't have a
working
week off.
we were actually working twice as hard, which is why we didn't have time to record.
Yeah.
But we were doing very, very much one Scott, one not related
Mhm.
activities.
Very important business.
Yeah. Do you want to fill them in? Tell them what we did?
We released our Celtic Collective class,
Yes.
and we released that to the public, and we also spent a lot of time making our new Celtic collection workbook that goes along with the class. So if you are interested in art and you want to join up, you can go to onescott1not.com and find out all about it there. It's a monthly club where we're doing fairy, fantasy, folklore, mythological style art. And if you sign up for the whole year, you get a free book that's got, oh, that word came out funny, book, a free book that is all full of inspirational images that are going to get your creative juices flowing for doing fantasy art. If you are watching on YouTube, I'm holding it up to the screen.
I know, it's so freaking beautiful. And not only is it going to inspire you, but we're actually using those images as the actual references that we're basing our art lessons off of. So it's actually pretty utilitarian. And I also filled it with some nuggets of tips, kind of artist tips, like ways that you can use references and why you use references and how you can use references to and make your work your own, actually. So yeah. Lucy's holding up our book as crystals.
Yeah,
Oh my
I'm
god!
having a wee flick through of the pages.
Yeah,
So obviously, if you're listening, then you can either go over to YouTube and watch us and listen again, or you can.
So it's fantasy and fairy, I would say, themed images, but also like medieval. So she's showing like stone circles and castles and doors and windows and mythological creatures like mermaids and of course fairies. There's weaponry, there's flora, there's
there's a sexy kelpie man. Well, he's not that kelpie, he's not that sexy.
Yes, there's dragons, there's unicorns, there's lots of kind of zoomed in fairy facial features, so you can get ideas for eyes, ears, nose, mouths, crowns, head decorations, makeup, how to make things look scary, weaponry. We really tried to pack as many gorgeous, full color. There's actually 300. I maxed out the entire software. We was a 300 image max and we hit 300. So I can tell you there's exactly 300 full color images in there of all copyright free photographs that are full color. So yeah. If you sign up for a whole year, you get that for free, mailed to you, and another guidebook to the clubs, actually anywhere in the world. And did you know I shipped 2 books out this morning to someone who lives in now I'm gonna forget what I was gonna say. Thailand, I think.
Wow.
I know. And I was like, I've never shipped books to Thailand, but I have shipped books to South Africa and Tasmania and many, many, many to Australia. But yeah, no matter where you are in the world, you are welcome to come and create some art with us because it's pretty awesome. So yeah, we just opened doors and come and sign up. And prices actually are going to go up on August 7th too. So if you're on the fence, come sooner rather than later so you can take advantage of that price break for you. But anyways, we just had to talk about it because it's so fun, and that's what Lucy and I do as that's our full-time jobs, is creating amazing projects and teaching you how to do them. So we would be remiss if we weren't mentioning that because that's our real heart right there.
Yeah, this week we're sponsored by the Celtic Collective.
That's right, at One Scott, One Not. So this week I'm enjoying a lovely Dixie cup
I was going to say that
of
cup
water
is tiny.
because I'm feeling crazy like
Do
that.
you have a little fairy cup there? It
Mhm.
is tiny.
I was in a hurry to press record and I couldn't find a regular cup. So this is what I'm feeling crazy.
Karen has a thimble full of water with her.
This has to last me the whole episode. So we can't go as long as we normally do today, Lucy. I'm afraid to say. Now, what was in your water bottle? Because you had there's like an herb. What is that? Basil? What is in your water?
It's mint.
Oh, you're so
mint
fancy.
from my garden. I know.
Now you're just showing off.
I know. Made nice flavored water, mint from my garden.
Lucy, what are we talking about today?
Before we start diving into this,
the listeners are like, "Oh my God, what now? What do you mean before?"
Bear with us, dear listeners. I know it's funny because I listened to some other podcasts that do the sort of chatty rambling thing that we do. And their reviews are always mixed. It's like, I love all the small talk. It's so nice. Yeah. Or quit the fucking small talk. Yeah. Get on to the subject.
Shut up. Just get to it already.
So you can't please everybody.
No.
We don't have enough listeners yet, maybe, to actually leave us reviews on that. So if you haven't yet, we would love a review.
Yeah, but only if it's a good one.
Only if it's a good one.
We actually try not to suck, believe it or not. We really do. I really care about this actually very much. Shockingly, I do. What were you going to say, though, before we start?
Before we get on to the main subject, we got an email. And Karen's going to read it out.
Oh, are we going to start with this? I thought we were going to end with it.
Do you want to end with it? Let's end with it. Let's keep you guessing.
Okay, I like that. Well, plus people are here for fairy rings, I feel like we need to give them what they want. And then if you want to stay for the end, there is a really extra juicy nugget.
Oh, there is.
Written in by our listener Ginger, who was our very first special guest we ever had in episode blank. I don't remember, but she's back and she has some really, really cool stories that I'm going to read off. But yeah, Lucy.
That's the clickbait of the episode. Yeah. Is that what it's called? Clickbait?
No, because clickbait actually that you don't actually end up talking about what you say you're going to.
Well, we're not clickbaiting.
It's the extra bonus material
It's the bonus material.
Yes.
Listen on. It is super good.
Yeah, it is.
Super spooky.
And it's not really long. It's just really good. She gets right to it. So
we're going to talk about fairy rings.
Yeah. And this is a big deal because this was the first fairy story I ever heard. And it was told to me by this woman that I love so much. And her name is Lucy Bryden. And this was my introduction to the possibilities that fairies were more than just Disney fairy tales, by the way. So this is like a big deal for me, this episode. Yeah. Anyways, I digress.
But I'm going to tell it again.
I know. So I'm going to shut up now and let you go.
But I actually had my own strange experience. That includes fairy rings. But before I get on to that, I thought it would probably be better to start with a little bit of information for anyone that doesn't actually know what all this whole thing is about.
Definitely.
So I think technically most people regard fairy rings as those rings of mushrooms that you get that spring up. And so they're a ring of mushrooms that suddenly appear in the grass, and usually the grass inside the mushroom is the mushroom ring is a little bit different from the grass on the outside, and that's called a fairy ring. But that is not the only thing that's classed as a fairy ring. You could get a ring of different kind of grass, a ring of stones, a ring of trees, anything like that is really a fairy ring. There is, if you wanted to be like super scientific and technical, there is actually a technical, scientific, biological reason why the ring of mushrooms grows in a ring like that. But I didn't really read that part because I wasn't interested in it. We're interested in the folklore side. Yeah. So there is a scientific reason. It's something to do with the spores in the mushrooms and them like coming out, but we don't actually care.
Nope.
Do we, Karen?
No, we don't.
We don't care about science on this podcast.
No, not in this case.
Not in this case. But there's actually fairy ring stories and the concept of fairy rings, or that ring of grass or mushrooms or stones being called a fairy ring throughout Europe. So it's not just Scotland. They're called different things in different parts of Europe. And the basic concept that they are a gathering space for fairies is true throughout Europe, but some of the little minor nuances change according to country. Did you know, though, that one of the largest fairy rings that was found in the northeast of France, and it was thought to be about 600 meters in diameter and over 700 years old. I think that's crazy.
Wow. What did they say? What was forming the shape of the ring? If it was rocks or trees or... Okay, I won't ask that question then. It's funny when you were saying all of Europe, France immediately came to mind. I feel like France has a lot of similar stories.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's super close to the rest of the UK, but I feel like there
are stories from Scandinavia, France, Germany, and they all kind of change a little bit. And obviously, some areas probably have more of the mushroom rings, and some areas have more of the rings made out of different kinds of trees or stones or whatever.
Yeah.
But a fairy ring, in essence, is a portal to the fairy realm. So it's a magical place, and I'm telling you right now, this is a warning. If you don't choose to follow my warning, then
all bets are off.
Yeah, it's your own fault. But fairy rings are not a good place. They're not. It's not fairy. The name fairy ring sounds super cute, but actually, fairy rings are not a cute thing. So in France, they're known as witches' circles, and in Germany, they're known as witches' rings, which carries on that whole concept of fairies and witchcraft being completely connected that we've spoken about in quite a lot of our episodes. So even in Europe, there's that connection between witches and the witch realm and the fairy realm.
Right.
And so the circles there are known as witches' circles. And in Holland, they thought that the circles showed where the devil put his milk churn down.
Weird.
I know.
That's weird.
Which actually also connects, if you think about it, to that whole notion of witchcraft and like curdling milk. They had a thing about witches curdled milk and spoiled milk, didn't they?
and fairy lore, it has an obsession with leaving cream out and
milk,
things being spoiling the cream and the butter and their gifts for the fae. And so it's like this whole tangled web. I mean, I think it just goes to show you the importance just the importance of cream, cheese, milk during these times. I mean,
definitely.
There was no Target back then. So, you know, you had to be very careful with the
We don't have a Target now. What are you talking about?
I know. I actually don't know how you quite survive, but it's okay. Manage. Good job.
There was no Coopy back then.
Yep.
Coopy.
It was probably everything.
Co-op's nothing like Target. So
no, it's not. It's really not. That's okay though.
Yeah. So I really love this one though. Wait until you hear this one. In I think it's Austria.
Okay.
Because the article that I read said in Tyrol, which I think is Austria, isn't it?
Okay.
An area of Austria.
Sounds good to me.
You guys can Google and double check our facts. They thought that the fairy rings were the tails of flying dragons, and the dragon flying around created the circle.
Oh, I like that.
I know. And then once he'd created the circle, only toadstools could grow there for 7 years.
Oh, that needs to be an art project.
I know.
Like from above, can you not just picture a dragon in a circle and just giving a little whiz? Oh my God, not pee whiz, like a whiz around Mars. Different whiz. He might be whizzing. That's so cool. Ooh,
I
that's really
know.
cool.
I want to know who came up with that concept, because
Yeah.
that was really imaginative. See that
Yeah, it
many
is.
mushrooms there? That's
Yeah.
dragon flying
Flying
around
in a
in
circle. I
circles.
like that. I like that a
Maybe
lot.
the mushrooms in that circle were flyagaric and they'd taken like a few too many of them, and they were hallucinating, and that's why they came up with that concept.
Yeah, it would make
But
sense.
also this thing of it being 7 years, because as soon as I read that, my first thought was like, there's quite a lot of these 7-year cycles in
Yes.
folklore.
Yeah.
But actually, don't you find it strange that I remember reading years ago that your cells in your body renew every 7 years as well?
That's fascinating. I remember reading that your cells renew, but I didn't remember that it was 7 in particular.
Well, I might actually be speaking rubbish, but I thought it was every 7 years.
Could be.
And
coincidence? I don't think
well,
so.
but if it's not a coincidence, they wouldn't have known that scientific fact back in like the 1200s.
We should do an episode of like what all the magical sevens are.
Oh, I know.
Because it would be really interesting to find out. There's way more than
before you forget.
Okay, I will.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Yeah. So you think the magic flying dragons is cool?
I do.
But in France,
I've never heard that.
The rings were guarded by giant bug-eyed toads that cursed you if you stepped inside the circle.
Oh. Well, that's a good deterrent right there.
I know. Can you imagine all these like slimy toads sitting on top of the mushrooms, like ribbiting?
Are there a lot of toads in Scotland? Do you guys have a lot? Are there a lot? Like if you have like a I'm gonna say like a boggy area, but like a little. And I'm only asking because we have a gazillion where we are. They like overtake our yard at night. All the reptiles come out. Yes. And it's like deafening. The sound of the frogs and the toads is absolutely deafening. Sean and I actually went outside and we recorded, I put it on my stories the other night. And it's like, it's the loudest sound you've ever, it's like the whole universe is screaming at you. And it's all the frogs.
I'd love to hear that.
We have some like, bogs. They're just like disgusting little ponds all around in our neighborhood, and that's where they all kind of go. But I didn't know if that's
not really. Like I wouldn't say I've never seen any in my garden. But I went out for a walk in the woods the other night with one of my friends, and it's a forest walk that follows the side of a river, and we spotted a little toad. Could have been a frog actually. I think it was a toad though. And it jumped across the path, and we were like, what's that? Oh my God. But even cooler than that was the whole walk as we were walking through the woods, and it was twilight, so it was just about to get dark. There were tons of bats.
Oh yeah. We have a lot of bats too here,
and they were swooping.
Yes, they're getting all their dinner. Yes,
it was just amazing. Yeah, because they mess with your sight because they come really close to you, and then you can't see them anymore. Yeah, and it's because they've gone woof out of the way really quickly.
Yep. Was that for your birthday? Was that your birthday walk?
No, it was just an evening walk.
Oh, well, happy birthday anyways, by the way.
And that night that we also heard a weird barking noise, and apparently it was a deer, a stag barking.
Oh, I've never heard of that. They would bark. Is that like, oh God, I might need to Google that immediately. Can you hear
it? Was like, it sounded like what I would imagine like the, what are those weird cryptids that you get in America?
The cicadas?
No, cicada's not a cryptid.
What is a cryptid? I don't even know what that means. Just reminded me of the word cicada.
Like the Yeti or the
Sasquatch.
Sasquatch, yeah, something like that.
Sasquatch bark.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. It was like a weird barking noise. And then
Wait, how did you know? How did you know then it was from a deer?
My friend Googled it when she got home.
Oh, deer bark. I'm
Yeah.
looking this up because I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Deer.
And then I was speaking about fairies and the very modern fairy sightings podcast. I was telling her about that, our absolute fascination with the modern fairy sightings podcast. And I looked into the forest and saw a really bright blue light.
Really?
Yeah. Which was probably like an animal's eye, like shining, but it was so spooky. It was like bright, almost like a
Is it an orb?
super bright blue.
Like an orb? Was it like a pinprick light or was it like a ball shape?
It was quite far away and it was just a circular blue light. But there was only one of them. And if it had been eyes, there should have been two.
Right. What do you think it was?
I don't know.
I
don't know. Although that woods is a little bit spooky. That's the one that has the hut that I can't walk past because it's
really
spooky. Yeah.
Oh,
it's got a hut in it that I know we've gone off track from fairy rings. It's got a hut in it that I feel like somebody's standing inside watching me from inside the hut and I can't. Yes, we had a little interruption there, but I was speaking about this weird spooky hut that is it's just, I feel like there's someone in the hut that's watching me from in the hut that's saying don't come any further.
Is it like a kill hut? Sean and I call them kill huts. Like,
yeah,
like, you know, when you see one, you're like, someone is murdering someone right in there.
Yeah. Apparently it's like a fisherman's hut or something, but it doesn't have like any glass on the windows. So it's just like, it's just got two big spaces where the windows are and a big space where the door is. So it's just so yucky, spooky.
Yeah. No, there's some places that you look at and you just don't go. You just know you just don't go.
I just can't go past it. I can't. Yeah. Can't even look at the hut.
Yeah. That's bad. And that's when you have to listen to your gut because that's
if I look at it, if I happen to come up as close to the hut that I can see it, as soon as it enters my field of vision, I'm like, okay, I'm turning around now. And I start walking out.
Do you ever walk there alone or no?
No.
Oh, thank God. I was like, please don't say yes. Please don't say yes. Please don't say yes. Steer clear of that woods, please. Thank you. Yeah, all right.
That blue light was super strange.
Yeah, I wonder what that was. It could have been another person. Are there trails in there?
No, it was right in the undergrowth. I mean, we were walking through the path in the forest and the ferns were 2 meters high. So we were in a tunnel of ferns. The ferns were above my head and they went through to they covered the forest floor with trees. So there was nobody up there.
That's super weird.
Yeah.
That's super weird. And blue is not like a color of nature either. So I wonder what that was. Well,
but it was shiny. Weird, but... It was shiny blue. It was like a shiny blue.
It's probably a twinkling fairy.
I think it must have been.
She's gonna come right out and say it. That's what I think it was.
I think it must have been. It's a good job there wasn't a fairy ring there because I would have been a goner. I would have been a goner because you don't want to go anywhere near them.
No. So tell me more about the fairy rings.
So, also, did you know that they even have stories about fairy rings all as far as the Philippines?
No, I did not know that. But I'm becoming less and less surprised that the whole fairy phenomenon are like a global phenomenon. Because I feel like the more research I do, that it's like, it's I feel like they're kind of everywhere and they all have their different cultures. They're in different times. present time included.
Yep.
So tell me more. I didn't know Philippines, specifically, but I'm not surprised to hear that.
I don't know anything about the fairy ring in the Philippines. I just jotted that down.
Oh, that's
So
okay.
But in Scotland and also in Scandinavian countries and in England, the main idea is that fairy rings are caused by fairies dancing in a circle.
Okay. I like that
So
visual.
whereas we have dragon's tails and all of those things, that's not a Scottish thing.
Got it.
It's fairies dancing in a circle, and it's almost this crazy incessant dancing that they do, where they get faster and faster and faster and faster, and then that causes the ring to appear, whether that's the mushrooms or the impression in the earth or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's been stories about fairy rings since as early as the 12th century, and there's even stories now in the 20th century. Right. In Ireland, which I think is kind of cool, because Ireland and Scotland have a lot of similarities, but also some differences.
Yeah.
And those Irish, they're obsessed with their hawthorn trees, aren't
Are they?
Because, well, remember when we watched the Fairy Faith and they were like, don't build the motorway next to the hawthorn tree.
Yes. It was, yes.
Because they think that fairy rings come from fairies dancing around a hawthorn tree.
Oh, okay. So specifically, interesting.
So specifically around a hawthorn tree.
Interesting.
But I found this really cute little mini story about, it says, apparently it's from a place called Balquhidder in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
It's really even hard for me to say that name, Balquhidder. It's spelled Balquhidder.
Oof.
That apparently there they said that the fairies used the mushrooms that were in the fairy ring as dinner tables.
Oh, that's a cute visual.
And I think that's super cute.
That is. We might have to do a painting on that as well. Can you imagine?
I can just imagine them all
place
sitting.
setting on the top of a little mushroom. So cute.
I know. A lot of places thought that the circle, whether it's a circle of trees or a circle of stones or circle of mushrooms, is actually, so it is a portal to the fairy realm. The fairy realm is inside the circle, but kind of a bit hidden. But also underneath this circle is an underground fairy village of some sort,
right?
Which is kind of hidden to our, so we live in a parallel universe to the fairy realm, and you could walk through the forest and see a fairy ring, and it looks just like a circle of mushrooms with grass on it, but if you walk inside, then you're suddenly transported in to their world, or underneath where they have, we wouldn't see it if you were to dig the ground. You might not see a fairy village, but in their other world there's a fairy village underneath the circle,
which is why you don't go in a fairy ring.
Oh my goodness, you do not want to go in a fairy ring. Are you listening?
Yes,
ladies and gentlemen,
heed our warning. Don't do it.
Yeah, so there are quite a few things that could possibly happen if you go inside a fairy ring.
And this is why. Number one of all the bad things that will happen to you.
Go. So some of them are just a little bit mischievous. So the fairies will entrance humans by dancing, and quite often they dance at certain times of the year or certain times of the day. So it's more likely to be twilight, and it's more likely to be at festival times, Beltane and all of those kinds of times. And they kind of do it because they're sneaky little buggers who want to play tricks on humans and want to try to sneak a human in, come and dance with us.
Mm-hmm.
Come and dance with us. Look, we're having so much fun. But then when they get you in the ring to dance, they'll do almost like, I could imagine, well, I don't even need to imagine. I'm sure I played games like this when I was little, where you go round and round and round so fast that you get dizzy.
Yeah, for sure.
There was a name for that game. Can you remember? Did you play it?
What dumb little kids play for fun? No,
yeah, Dizzy Ducks or something.
I don't think there was a name, but we for sure did it. Yes.
Oh well,
yes.
we had a name because in
Did
Scotland we make everything more complicated.
Oh.
We have a name for everything and a story behind everything. So there probably was a name and a story behind.
Well, when you remember what it is, let us know because I want to know.
I think it was Dizzy Ducks. Anyway, so they get people and they'll go round and round and round in a circle, make them super dizzy, and then just like let them go, and the person will flop out and be super dizzy and lose their balance, and it's just to give the fairies a laugh.
Oh. Yeah, they're tricksters.
That's the least nasty one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and that's not bad.
This is a sliding scale, so we're starting with the one that is the least.
That's just child's play.
That's just child's play. That's just fairies making their own amusement. But obviously,
do they make themselves seen during this time, or are they still sort of unseen?
Must do. Yeah, there's a lot of stories about people encountering, and this is why there's that idea of, am I boring you, Karen?
I'm so tired. There's nothing I can do against it. It's not you.
There's a lot of stories of people encountering a ring of fairies dancing, which is why this whole story of that is how the fairy ring comes about.
Right.
So they must see them.
Well, and those times a year, the veil between the worlds is supposed to be quite thin too. So I wonder if the sightings and things like that are more common during those times.
Yeah, they must be.
That reminds me of, in that Fairy Faith movie, that woman in Canada at the very end of the movie, that was what she had seen as a child. She was like, right there was a ring of fairies and they were all dancing in a circle. And she described exactly what you just described. Yeah. So yeah, just the dancing and the music.
And they'll quite often, the whole music and dancing, they'll try and get someone to come in and play music with them and lure people.
I was going to say, but that's a trap.
Party. It is a trap. It is a trap.
So that's the best case scenario. What else?
Case scenario is you get a little bit dizzy
and send you on your way.
But you could have, if you accidentally step inside a fairy ring, you could be cursed with bad luck. You could get bad health. You could even die. You could become invisible to the people that are outside the fairy ring. Ooh. So you're like trapped inside and it's impossible to leave.
Or if you're invisible and you're like screaming to your family,
oh my God, that's like a horrible nightmare movie.
That is, right?
That is a horror movie right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I haven't heard that one either.
And sometimes they make you dance until you actually go mad.
Ooh.
Or you die.
Oh God, you literally dance to death?
So they get you in this ring and they spin you round, and sometimes they let you go just so they can have a laugh, but sometimes they actually spin you round until you die, which is pretty nasty, fairies.
That's awful. I would be an easy death because I get really sick. I get really sick. So I would go quick. So that would actually,
I should take your anti-sickness tablets before you start.
That would last longer before I died. Great.
The agony would go on.
Hang on, I need to take my Dramamine real quick before we begin. Hang on a second. Oh man,
you'll be able to make fun of me for 25 minutes instead of 5.
Oh, I'd not heard of that. That's awful. That's not a good way to go. Little sick bugger.
It's not a good way to go. No. I think I'd rather I think I'd rather disappear than be spun to death.
I think so too. Although if you're dead, you're sparing the agony of never being able to communicate with your loved ones again.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's
what else?
true.
What else happens?
So
there's more things. I know.
Yeah, there's more things. So in Somerset, in England, apparently fairy rings were called galley traps.
Ooh.
And they were called galley traps even up until into the 20th century, because they thought that if someone who had committed a crime stepped inside a fairy ring, they would hang within the year.
Ooh.
It was
that's okay. I mean, they did create
a crime.
I mean,
so it's almost like if fairies know that they've done something wrong and they like lure these people in,
like
so
doling out the punishment. Oh, interesting. Were they any specifics on the like level of crime? Like, did it have to be, it could be like you just steal your neighbor's bicycle or you murder someone?
Yeah, no, Google was not my friend this episode.
Oh, Wikipedia.
All the articles were like super short without much going into too much detail.
They should do a test where they take like convicts and then they just put them in the middle of fairy rings and then see what happens.
Yeah. That's a little bit harsh.
Well, maybe it would alleviate like the jail system, because they would have something like, they're like, who needs a break? Who wants to go hang out in a fairy ring? You know, they're not doing much else. Maybe they could take volunteers, sign a waiver. So if something did happen, it wouldn't be on the jail.
For 7 years. If I get spun to death.
But I mean, they've all committed crimes.
Prepared to get spun to death.
So we could do like a scientific method experiment and like systematically test different convicts and see what happens. See what punishment the fairies dole out to these individuals. I want to know.
I think that could be a thing. That, in fact, that could be an ideal new.
I'm gonna write a letter.
Reality TV show.
I'm gonna write a letter to some prisons and see what we can get going.
You know how they did that reality TV show where they sent people who weren't prisoners into the prison?
Oh no.
You see that?
Mm-mm.
It was really interesting. They like sent people who weren't prisoners into the prison, and they filmed the whole thing with like hidden cameras. They could, so you could have a new reality TV show.
Oh my God.
You could call it Convicts
versus Fairy. Who wins?
Convict versus Fairy.
Although I have to tell you, this is going to be a really short aside, but I have to tell you because it's about prisons. And maybe this is why this idea just jumped in my head. I was listening to the podcast, Tenfold More Wicked Words. You know,
yeah, it's a good one.
It's so good. And I was just listening to this yesterday, and this woman was researching Mexican prisons. And she was like, the Mexican prisons are like, if you have money and you're in a Mexican prison, you lead like the best lives ever. So they had all these gang members, like who were like insane murderers who had murdered thousands of people. And they were all in prison, and they would bring in farm animals to entertain the children when their children would come visit them in prison. And they kept running out of farm animals because the children of the murderers were killing the farm animals that were coming to entertain them.
Oh, you're joking.
No, isn't that the most?
That's so messed up.
That is a new level of messed up, because they were talking about if this is like inherited, like how do you get to that such level of evil? Like how does someone even get that dark? And then they were talking about, well, that just shows how dark they are. Like it literally runs in their families. Like the children were murdering the innocent farm animals that they were bringing in for their entertainment. Sorry, that was just a quick prison aside.
Awful. Well, we definitely need to stick some of them in a fairy ring and see what happens.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, they have it coming. Okay, go on.
This actually could work, because the next one is that in some Scandinavian countries, apparently if you step inside a fairy ring, you're gonna have like hallucinations forever.
Oh, forever?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's bad too.
I know. That could also make
Unless they
a
were
quite
good.
hilarious reality
Yeah.
TV show.
Unless they were like good hallucinations. I mean, they're not very
Yeah.
specific about what that means.
And maybe that depends on whether the fairy rings are made up of certain mushrooms or not. I don't know.
True.
Yeah.
And what about the time travel? Because you haven't.
Well, I know
haven't
that
even
is the
gotten.
spookiest one.
Yeah, it is.
That is the spookiest one. So this was a super weird one. Apparently, one story said that there was this man who stepped into a fairy ring and then he came back out again, like nothing had happened. But when he tried to eat food that wasn't fairy food, he crumbled to dust.
Oh, there's a lot with the fairy food, though.
There's a lot with food.
There
I know.
is.
I feel like we need a whole episode on fairy food.
Definitely do, because this comes up all the time. And I know they say, like, when you're with the fairies, don't eat the food because there's bad things like that happen.
Yeah, he must have eaten fairy food while he was in the circle.
Yes, I think he did.
Yeah. So even collecting grass or flowers from around the fairy ring or inside the fairy ring can bring you bad luck. So you don't even want to do that.
Yeah.
It's not just stepping inside. It's
like don't mess with anything. Did I tell you?
Don't mess with it.
When we were on the Isle of Skye, how our tour driver was like, do not take anything here. He's like, I'm not messing around. And he told us different time. Like they get in the mail, they'll get like rocks and like weird things in the mail from people who are like, take it back. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to take this. You told me not to. And now 6 people in my family have died since I returned from my trip. And I had this rock in my pocket.
That's from the big fairy glen.
Yes.
The big fairy glen in
Skye.
Skye.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And they were like, I'm not messing around. Like, don't do it.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay.
I know, you really don't.
It sounds crazy, but they were like, no, these are real stories. And I'm like, are they? I'm like, no, I really don't think they were making them up. Yeah.
No, well, again,
just why take your chances? Just don't take the rock. Don't mess around.
And I know we say this every week, but there are people in France and Scandinavia and the Philippines all saying the same thing. There must be something in it.
Just listen.
I know. So I'm going to get onto the time travel in a minute. But I'm going to say the only safe way, apparently, to investigate a fairy ring is if you run around it 9 times.
Ooh.
And apparently, if you do that and you can hear the fairies dancing underground, you have to do it when there's a full moon and in the direction that the sun. This is so complicated.
I was going to say there's got to be a directionality thing in there. There always is.
I would never have got this right. I'd be standing at the edge of this fairy ring going,
a lot of rules.
what's how many times and sometimes I can't count without losing count. I would be awful. Wow. And I would never get around it in the right way.
In your defense, 9 is a really high number.
Do it in the direction that the sun travels during the day.
Right.
And then apparently, because, we're in Scotland and we like to make things complicated, if you wear your hat backwards as well, it'll confuse them.
Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised. It sounds right. Some of the other things that we were told when we were going to the fairy glen was there's no whistling. Don't whistle. That's very highly offensive. Yeah. Don't put your hands in your pockets.
They have a lot of rules.
There's a lot of rules.
There is.
Yeah. So that sounds in line with a lot of other things that I've heard about said fairy rings.
If you see somebody who is being sucked into the fairy ring, if you grab them really quickly, you can possibly drag them out.
Oh,
so you have to like drag them, grab them. And there's a lot of stories of people being with other people and those people witnessing their friends being sucked into a fairy ring and being lured into a fairy ring and them grabbing them by the coattails and like grabbing them just as they come out.
But why isn't this in a movie somewhere? Like, why is this not a movie?
Well, I did watch I watched a movie the other night and it was I can't remember the name of it, so that's really rubbish. Sorry,
Awesome.
guys.
Go on.
But it was about the Cottingley fairies, about
Oh,
the
yeah.
Cottingley fairy
Yep.
girls. It's called something like A Fairy Tale or something
Yeah.
like that.
But
And
that
it
was
is a super cute movie. It's a kids movie. It was made in like, I don't know, 20 years ago maybe.
but that was fake.
Was it though?
Yes.
Was it though?
It was.
Yeah, I know it was.
It was.
I know.
But I want a good movie on like scary fairies.
But in that movie, there's a fairy ring, and somebody steps into it by mistake, and he gets all like flustered, and they're like, "Don't step in the fairy ring!" And he's like, "Ah!"
When I was in Iceland, in front of one of the places that we stayed, there was 2 perfect mushroom circle fairy rings, and I was like freaking out, and everyone thought I was like totally crazy because they have a real deep roots and beliefs in elves and the hidden people, and I'm like, you guys, I'm like a fairy ring, like right now. I have like 80,000 pictures of like these 2 fairy, but they were like perfectly formed, and I was like, oh my god, you guys, you don't understand the significance. My mom and sister were like, you have lost your mind. Anyways, come on, Karen. But
I don't know if I've ever actually seen a mushroom fairy ring. I've seen lots of circles of other things.
Oh gosh.
I don't think I've seen a mushroom one before.
Oh my, yeah, these were like,
actually I'm telling a lie. I did last year in the woods. Yeah.
I was gonna say there was a perfect one in my neighbor's yard, and I wanted to go and see it, but it was right by their front door, and I didn't want to be standing right in their front door, like looking at their weird mushroom circle, like, oh my god, you have a fairy ring. They would have been like,
did you see they didn't step inside, did they?
No, but I was like, oh my god, I want to go see it closer and take a picture.
Would you be tempted to?
I'm not putting my toe anywhere near a fairy ring.
Like give someone else a little shove,
just
to see what happens.
Yeah, I would do that.
I would do that.
I would totally do that.
Maybe we're the evil fairies.
Maybe we are. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So what about more about this?
Look at this fairy ring.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oops.
Oopsies.
Oh, I elbowed you.
You just like sneeze. You're like, choo, and just like give them an old shove in there.
Someone you don't like.
Yeah.
Your neighbor,
Yeah.
Oops.
I did have an evil neighbor. I used to. Oh my gosh. So what about, okay. There's so much here, and you told me before we hit record that there was hardly anything on fairy rings.
I always think that every time I'm researching, I'm like, I haven't got enough information, and then
so much. I didn't know any of these things.
Apparently, the big thing for me that I find super interesting is that time moves differently in a fairy ring. So many of the stories are about how people get lured into a fairy ring, and then they come back out again, and they think only a few hours have passed, but actually years have passed, several years or even more than that, which is super scary. So there's a story about, now this isn't about a actual fairy ring itself, because as a side note, there are lots of other places in Scotland and in other Celtic countries in Ireland and places like that that are also considered portals and not just the rings. So fairy mounds, fairy hills, all of those kinds of things are also considered the place where you've got access to the fairy world. So I kind of almost went off in a little bit of a tangent with some of my research, because it was really hard to find actual fairy ring individual account stories apart from my own,
which we haven't even gotten to yet.
But a lot of the research that I did, it was just, this is what happens at a fairy ring, but there weren't actual individual stories. A lot of the actual individual stories were about other fairy portal structures. So I've included a few of them. There was this cool one about this was written down by someone called the Reverend George Sutherland. I got this from the Lore of Scotland book, which is one of our favorites. And It's written down by the Reverend George Sutherland in the early 1900s, so in 1937. And he told a story about two men who were passing a broch, which is an Iron Age tower, just like how in Outlander is called broch Tura, isn't it?
Yeah.
Broch?
Yeah.
Is it broch Tura?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's like a round Iron Age tower. That's what a broch is in Scotland. It's like a really, apparently they're super ancient. They're from like 500 BC, but people still lived in them or had that. They were still standing 1,000 years later, or even longer than that. They were still in use, but they were originally built all that time ago. So these two guys, this is your typical fairy encounter abduction, alien fairy abduction story. This is like, you know how alien abductions, they kind of follow a pattern, and a lot of them have so many similarities.
Yes.
And I'm finding with the fairy stories that it's almost like that. It's like the earlier version of an alien abduction, in that they have a lot
I
of
agree.
the same things happen.
I agree for sure. Which just means that they're true.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe
aliens skirt around the issue, Lucy.
But maybe aliens are fairies.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is like a whole nother school of thought about fairies or fairies.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, these two guys were walking past this tower, and they were carrying a keg of whiskey, because it's Scotland and that's what you do in Scotland. You
a keg of whiskey. That is a lot of whiskey.
And then because it is Scotland, what was happening? There was a door in this tower, and fairies were inside dancing and playing the bagpipes, because it's Scotland.
Awesome.
So one of the men wanted to join in, but the other one didn't. He was being a party pooper. So the guy that wanted to join in went in to join in with the dancing, and the guy that didn't want to go in waited outside, just like how when you go shopping with a guy and he waits outside the shop and makes you feel super awkward, because like he's looking at his watch and like, you know,
I'm coming.
Yeah, I know. It really
annoying.
Pisses on your parade a little bit. It does. Spoils your fun. Yeah. So it's not just go and join in. Anyway, so the friend waited outside, checking his watch, tapping it, tutting, called on his friend. Come on, where are you? I've been waiting for ages and I want to go and I'm so bored and you've taken ages. But the friend didn't appear. And then eventually the guy outside was like, I'll give up. I'm going home. He can make his own way home. He's obviously drank all the whiskey with the fairies and I can't be bothered. You do realize I'm putting my own spin on this story.
Love it. I am so in. I
was just going to read it from the book.
No, I love it. I'm so in.
So he thought, well, he'll just make his own way home in the morning after he's done partying, like a dirty stomp out. Do you have that word over in America?
A proper stomp out? No.
A dirty stomp out?
No. A dirty stop out?
Yeah.
No.
Somebody who's stayed up all night partying and they like walk home the next day and they're still got their party clothes on.
We refer to that as the walk of shame.
Oh, we call it the walk of shame as well, but it's also a dirty stop out.
Oh, no, we just have the one expression. Yours is cooler, as always.
So I know, of course.
I know.
I know. So the friend still hadn't come home. So the guy went back to the tower to investigate, but the door had disappeared.
Oh shit. That's not good. That is not good.
And there were no sign of the fairies.
Oh.
So what did he do? He realized he had to wait exactly a whole year, because quite often what happens is these things get recreated at regular intervals, whether it's yearly or at the same
or every 7
festival
years.
or every 7 years.
Right.
So it's not just arbitrarily.
Whoa. So what happened?
So he had to wait a whole year, and then he went back, and there was music again, and all the partying and the dancing. There was the door, and his friend was there having a great old time.
Oh my gosh.
So the man decided that he needed to really take action.
Yeah. Oh,
So
I'm scared for him. He went into?
No, he put some iron
Oh,
in the doorway.
smart.
He was clever.
Yeah, he was.
Because fairies are scared of iron. They can't come near it. So he put some iron in the doorway to stop the fairies from leaving. And he grabbed his friend and pulled him out. Even though his friend was like, I'm not done dancing.
Right.
I'm only been here for 5 minutes.
I was just going to ask you that, if you thought like he had just gotten there. So cool.
So the friend thought he'd only just got there, and the man was like, no, you've been gone for a whole year. No, you're speaking rubbish. And he grabbed his friend. And then that was the end of the story, apart from the fact that when he got home, his children didn't recognize him because he'd been gone so long.
At least it was only 1 year. I mean, some stories it's like 200, right?
I know.
That's not even that bad.
I know. So that was a story of a tower, a broch. I love that sound.
Yeah.
That probably sounds awful down my microphone.
Hucking a lug. No, that was recorded in 1937.
That was in 1937.
That is less than 100 years ago. That's crazy.
No.
I
know. And there's lots of other stories of similar things happening in other areas that aren't just fairy rings. So I know we've gone off the fairy ring track slightly, but it's a very similar notion of these rings of trees areas. Or rings of apparently there's stones. I'm gonna have to scroll up my notes because it's all the way back at the beginning and I can't remember what it is. But apparently there are some stones in Shetland that are said to be they're said to be fossilized fairy dancers. So the fairies were dancing in a circle and then the sun rose and they got caught.
That's
and
cool.
They fossilized into these stones. The stones are called Fetler, the stones at Fetler in Shetland. And apparently there's 2 concentric rings of stone, and then there are 2 larger stones that are upright, and they're supposed to be the fiddler and the fiddler's wife.
That's super cool.
I know.
Have you been to Shetland?
I'm not. I'd really love to go.
Oh, we gotta go.
I need to go on holiday. You need to come.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go.
I know.
And Orkney.
So before I get on to my story, I wanted to just touch on something that we do not have time to talk about all of this, but I am definitely going to do an episode, maybe even my next one, because I started reading up on it and I was like, oh my God, how did I not know this?
What is it?
But apparently there's loads of really famous fairy hills and mounds throughout Scotland. There's one called, and I didn't realize that there would be actual named places that were still known as Fairy Hill in areas of Scotland. So there's a hill in Inverness called Tom na Chúrich, and I know where that is, and that is a famous fairy hill. And there's a fairy hill in Aberfoyle, and there's Carton Hill in Edinburgh, which is also known as being a fairy hill, and of course the Eildon Hills in the Borders, which is where Thomas the Rhymer came from. He was from that area.
Are there any Are there any close to you?
Not that I know of, but I'm going to do a bit of research.
Yeah.
But the one that is the most famous is a hill called Sheahallen, I might be saying it wrong, and it's down near Perth, and funnily enough, it is at the edge of Loch Rannoch, where Kinlochranich, where they filmed the standing stones for the Outlander.
Mm.
And it's apparently also got the oldest, I'm sure I'll repeat this if I do an episode on this hill, but never mind. It's got the oldest yew tree in the whole of Europe on this hill. And this hill is called the Fairy Hill, the main fairy hill of the Caledonians. And there's all these crazy legends about caves and magical caves and Queen Mab and different things happening and people going missing. And there's tons of stories. So I started reading this, even though I went off on the fairy rings track a little bit, just because it was another fairy portal, basically.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I started reading it and I read more and more and more, I went, oh no, this needs to be a separate episode because this hill is just the coolest place ever. I need to go there and visit.
I wonder if there's any like copyright free images from these places that we could compile them in a book, like our Standing Stone Circle book. We should make another book that's like well-known. Yeah. Fairy portals.
Places. I know, because that place, I just couldn't believe that even now, when you Google the name of it and it comes up with walking, hiking, touristy websites that are showing you about hiking there, it's still called the Fairy Hill and it's still got reference to all the fairy stories from that area.
Love it.
I know. Love it. So I am going to stop talking about that hill now and not tell you any of the stories, because I think that we need to have like a whole episode on that.
Well, we do. And in our efforts to keep this less than 90 minutes.
We never do it. We never do it.
We haven't even heard your story yet.
I know.
So I need to hear that.
Okay.
I need it because it's amazing. And it's
like try and cut it down so it's a speedy.
No, I want you to don't rush your own story. Okay. We can cut out the beginning boring botanical shit if we need to.
We can cut out the fake plants.
No, we don't need that at all. So no, I want you to take your time because your story we need to hear because it's amazing.
Yeah, so I had my own strange fairy ring encounter that to this day I just cannot explain. It was the strangest thing. It was about 10 years ago now. I looked back at the photographs that I'd taken and they were dated from 2012, so it's nearly 10 years ago, and I was driving with my son in the back and a friend of mine to take her to the train station. So we were in a little bit of a hurry and we couldn't just stop for no reason because she had a train to catch. And as we were driving along the road, not far from my house, so this is a road that I go on all the time, weekly. It's not a brand new road to me. I'm always on this road. We almost instantaneously spotted and said to each other, oh, I've never seen that sign before. And there was a sign pointing into the field off the road. Off the road there was a field, but there was actually a little path going up the field from the road, and the sign said fairy ring. But it wasn't like someone had just taken a piece of wood and painted fairy ring on it just because they had a party there that week. It looked like it'd always been there. It looked like one of those, if you live in Scotland, you'll know what I mean, but one of those like historic Scotland signs.
It was metal. So didn't you say it was metal?
It was like a metal sign, and it looked like temporary, kind of like a road sign, but the road signs that they use in this country to indicate a national monument. So if there's a national monument or a historic monument or anything like that, things like stone circles, towers, all those kinds of things have road signs that look a little bit different from the normal road signs, but they're still metal. And it was a road sign like that, and it was pointing up into the field. And thankfully thankfully we were in a rush. So we all saw it, all three of us in the car saw it. So I was not hallucinating. But we said, we haven't got time to stop now because I need to take you to the train. We haven't got time to stop. Let's remember that we saw that there. That looks like a cool thing that would be cool to go and investigate. Just like if I saw a sign for a stone circle or something, I'd go, oh, but I was shocked that I hadn't seen it before because I've been on that road all the time. And let's go back and investigate another day. And so I took her to the train station. And then obviously driving home was facing the other way, so didn't think anything of it. The next time I went on that road, the sign had gone. There was nothing. And then my friends came to visit me again not long after. So we decided to go and investigate. So we parked at the side of the road and walked up the little path where we'd seen the fairy ring sign, but there was no fairy ring sign anymore. And it was just so strange up there, Karen, because there was a ring of trees in the field at the top of, kind of almost like at the top of the hills. The path went sloping up a hill. There was a ring of trees. And the trees, I took photos of the trees because the trees looked like people. So they were shaped like a woman. You know, you see those woman symbol type art. It was like there was a head and arms, and then just a silhouette. Mm-hmm. It was like a silhouette of a woman in this circle of trees. And then even weirder was caked into the mud. The mud was all dry, but it was all like dry and cracked. It was like an old path. It wasn't tarred or anything. There was a shoe, this leather shoe that was totally squished, and it looked like it had been there for years and years and years. It didn't have laces in it. There was nothing in the shoe that made it look like a modern shoe. It looked like an old leather, like work boot or something.
Yeah, I have pictures of it in.
Yeah.
Can you get those again, or do you want me to refer them to
I've got the folder on my computer.
We'll put them on the blog that goes with this episode because it's really crazy.
Yeah. So I told a few people after this happened because I just thought it was so intriguing. And of course, most people looked at me like I had two heads and that I'd been eating the mushrooms of the fairy ring. But one person who is interested in all local folklore and all of that kind of thing, the first thing she said to me was, well, it was a good job you didn't follow it when you saw the sign. Because goodness knows where you would have ended up if you'd gone up there that day.
They were like straight up luring you. Yeah.
And what freaked me out even more was that she said it like it was specifically there to lure us.
Right.
Which totally freaked me out. I was like, no. And that place is just so strange. I can't go up there.
Yeah. Is that close to where you live now?
Yeah, it's only a few miles away.
Oh gosh.
I know.
I'm like, I secretly want to be like, can we go there next time I'm there? But then I'm secretly like, don't take me to the place because it's super. I wonder if those tamped down shoes are still there.
I know when we went up there and took photos, we didn't go up to the circle of trees. We just took photos from a distance. I was like, someone's watching me from that circle of trees. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, that would be kind of like the fairy ring anyways, going in that cup.
I think the circle of trees was the ring. You know how I was talking earlier about how it's not just a mushroom?
Yeah.
It's because I also have another story that my dad told me years ago, and my dad was super skeptical about anything magical, mystical, spiritual, anything. And he told me that someone that he knew went and sat inside a stone circle somewhere, and they while they were sitting inside the stone circle, they felt that the earth around the outside of the stone circle was spinning at a faster rate than the earth that they were sitting on inside the stone circle.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what the story of fairy rings and time moving differently talks about.
Right. The speed and the
Yeah.
circular movement. I didn't even put that together. Yeah. I remember when you told us that at the stone circle that you kidnapped and took us to on our 2019 retreat. The energy is real in those places though.
Yeah.
There is definitely something going on there. Was that guy alone who was sitting?
I have no idea, because my dad told me that
ago.
story like 10 years ago.
Oh my God.
I'm not around to quiz him about it anymore. Yeah.
There's a lot of stories about the fairy rings though, that they might not be direct stories just about that, but they're sort of interwoven among other ballads and stories, and they're sort of like parts of other longer tales.
Yeah, I found quite a few that I wasn't going to read out because the fairy ring part was only like one sentence in the whole story, but there are a lot of stories,
and the time element seems to come up more and more and more as well,
and lots of tales of people going missing, even if it's just for a week. They'll go missing for a week and they'll come back and they don't think a whole week's passed. They're all confused. They don't know what's happened to them.
Right. And there's stories when people come out and their children are like older than they are now, right? They have a hard time. Or people come in, they're dressed, everyone is dressed strangely because they literally popped out in a different time. As we should have a follow-up episode, because I think as we do more research on other things and we come across these stories, we should make a note and like collect them and just have like tales of fairy rings, because it's one of those things that pops up almost so much that
for sure
kind of disregard them, and then it would be really fun to have like top greatest fairy ring hits of the 16th century.
Top 10 scary, spooky time travel fairy abduction stories. Because there's lots of fairy abduction stories that aren't, true. There are from mounds and rings and forests. I know, and so many things.
I know. And I do want to see like I wonder if there's anywhere you can buy, even at like a stupid tourist shop, where they have like the marked fairy mounds and fairy rings. Maybe we should make one.
Well, funnily enough, I think that PDF that I sent you today had a note in it of a book that was published a while ago on fairy sighting locations.
Oh, really? Okay. And I was gonna,
but it was published in like the 1800s or something. It's from a long time ago, not recently.
Well, we'll have to investigate.
If it's not from that link, it was from something else, and I bookmarked it. I've definitely bookmarked that information for future reference.
Well, I'll definitely go check that out. I just couldn't open it on my phone, but I will check it from my computer.
God, we got so serious there.
I know. Well, it's serious stuff. I'm sure it's very serious to the people that it happens to. It's like not messing around.
I was quite relieved that I hadn't gone up there. As much as I at the time wanted to investigate, afterwards I was like, thank God I didn't go up there. God knows what would have happened to me.
So where, in relation to the copse of trees, was the shoes that you saw? Was it?
It was on the path
on the way.
So there was like a little mud path that was dried mud.
Right.
going from where the sign was,
Yeah.
going up the side of the field, leading to where the trees were. And it was on that path.
Directly going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your story was crazy when I heard about it, but then when you showed me the pictures, I was like, dude, that's like next level stuff.
I know. We
Because it
can
was
put the
like,
pictures on our Instagram.
yeah, for sure. It was so interesting. They really are super old timey shoes in there.
I know.
Just like stamped down into the dried
They're
mud
like
and dirt.
super, and it's not even like it was a road that a car could go on that would
Right.
squish something in, and they were like flattened.
It looks like something, it looked to me like an exhibit that you would see in a museum,
Yeah.
you know, like an archaeological, like display almost. Like, how big were those shoes? Were they
They
adult
were like
size
normal
or
size,
child?
which is
adult
they were
size
adult
7.
size, which yeah, because I was gonna say there are other instances of people finding old timey leather shoes in places, and
Really?
I think I even listened to, there's another fairy podcast. Have you been listening to Encounters with the Good People? Do you listen to that one?
No, but I'm gonna write it down, so I will.
There's another podcast called Encounters with the Good People. It's a super cute fairy folklore podcast.
Okay.
And in one of her episodes, she speaks about people finding old. I should have listened to it again, so it was fresh in my mind before when I was doing research for this one. But it was a while ago that I listened to it, and I remember thinking, what? Okay, it's not just me, because it was something to do with people finding old shoes at fairy ring sites.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like a thing?
It's a thing, Karen. It's a thing.
Heck? Well, we'll tack this on to our other stories. I need to know more about this.
I know.
No, I did not know that was
and
a
then
thing.
There was also a story about somebody else, not in that podcast, but there was a story about somebody else finding a tiny little shoe that couldn't have really been made by human hands.
Oh, I've heard that story on somewhere. Was that on the Modern Fairy Sightings one, maybe?
That was in the Modern Fairy Sightings.
I was like, I definitely remember that. Yep. And it did remind me of your shoes too.
Yeah. So I think shoes are a thing, which is crazy, which is something that I would like to investigate a little bit more.
Yes, I think so.
Because I think if it hadn't been for the weird shoe and the people-shaped trees, I would have just been like, well, I must have been seeing that sign.
No,
but the place itself was just so strange that
yeah, there was definitely something going on there.
Yeah. Definitely.
And the fact that the sign was a metal sign, that's so creepy too.
It's almost like it was magic.
Yeah.
It was like it was it was almost like it was an illusion put there to lure somebody.
Yeah.
Like a trick.
Yep.
You know, because it looks real, so therefore it's going to trick you. Whereas if it had just been a plank of wood that someone had taken some paint and painted fairy, I would have naturally assumed that some kid lived nearby, even though there aren't houses there. It's in the middle of the countryside, but some kid lived nearby and they decided to have a party, so they decided to paint this thing to have their party up there. But it's not, it's farmland. It's not, there's no kids. There's no house there.
Right. Well, and I was kind of fantasizing about actually editing this podcast episode, but I actually already, when you told that to me, when you were doing your art project, and I did edit it and I did put it to music and I added your photos onto the story reel as you were telling them. And I was researching when I was editing that YouTube video, which by the way is on the front, it's on our homepage of our website. If you go to One
So if
Scott,
you want
One
to hear
Not,
the story twice, then
well, it's a short version, but it's also kind of illustrated because it has your photos intertwined as you're telling them. But when I was editing that, I was looking for like Scottish historical Scottish road signs, so you can really understand like what exactly she was seeing. And then you can see the shoes and you can hear the tale along that sort of, and you see the pictures of the photos of the trees too that look like women. So if you want to see the quote unquote illustrated version of Lucy's story, it is on the main homepage of our website. It's just it's such a magical, eerie little tale. I know. I just love it. When you first told that to me and I made that video, I like made everyone I ever met watch it.
It's like I still to this day don't have any way of explaining it.
Yeah. It's really
still
cool.
I can't explain what happened there.
Well, it's also weird because it's a road, like, so it's, it's not like you were not mistaken and that place. So, and you knew it because you went exactly to that place to go see it. Like that's what's creepy about it. It's like in your own backyard. So you would know.
I know.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I have decided, I think, because we're at 90 minutes.
Oh, are we teasing them even more?
So what I'm not going to do is read Ginger's story because
that was clickbait, Karen.
It was clickbait.
Oh my God.
Because do you know why? Because I decided to honor her story. I will do a ghost fairy related story so we can tie it in, because I feel like it's gonna stick out in this episode, not in a bad way, but just it'll change topics, and we already have exceeded our.
So we're gonna talk about it next week.
So we're gonna talk about it next week, and I will couple it with something that's related, so it can tie in together, and it'll be super on point. Or if you want to read it to tie it in with what I'm going to talk about, so we can all revel in
you're gonna have to come back next week to hear Ginger's story.
That's right. And whatever thing I'm going to talk about, which I don't even know.
We're not breaking with tradition there by being super organized.
God forbid we don't wait till the very last second to hit record. Such is our lives anyways. But thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, Lucy. You did an amazing job. And there was so much to talk about. That was awesome. So thank you. I was like thoroughly sucked into all of those stories and your story. And that's my favorite thing about this podcast, is that it's like a good movie to me, where I have this crazy busy life. My kids are home for the summer. Like my husband's also working. Like there's this crazy hubbub and doctor's appointments and like running errands and all this craziness. And then it's like all of a sudden like takes me on a 90-minute vacation in the middle of my day. It's so special. Like
a little journey to Scotland.
I know. I just love it so much. I just covet these 90 long minutes.
And we went a whole episode without having a word feud.
I know. Oh, that's not true. Well, I did learn that new expression, like coming home drunk.
I do have to tell you a funny thing. I was in Cullen the other day, which is this little village up in the seashore in Aberdeenshire, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's straight by the sea, and it's got loads of antique shops and secondhand shops, and Can hates me because she loves it there.
I know.
And I was there and she wasn't. And loads of the antique shops sell lots of secondhand books. So I was looking through all of the secondhand books to see if I could find any books for our podcast. And I found a book and took a photo for you that I will put it in our Instagram, because I didn't take it. I got my son to take it because I left my phone in the car. So he took the photo. And the book was called Higgledy Piggledy.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. And I am so jealous not being able to go
I
to
didn't
that.
buy the book. It looked
I
like a
know.
shit book, but I took a photo.
And I've never had such regret over not buying something in my whole life as after I left that store, because they had books from like the 1600s in there.
Well,
And
that particular shop was closed. So
okay, well, that makes
don't be
me
too
feel
jealous.
better.
It was closed the day we
Oh,
went.
look
Yeah.
at my cute doggy. She's so
I
cute.
know.
And you squish her head in the distance.
But yeah, that bookstore is amazing,
It's
isn't it?
amazing. Yes, it absolutely is. And I'm
Yeah.
going there with like money in hand, and I'm just gonna be like, here's all my money. I'm taking all your books. Yeah, it's insane. That just doesn't exist in the United States. You can't walk into a store and buy a book from 1642. That's not a thing.
That's because
It's
that's
not
the
a
year
thing.
Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
I know, but it's just not a thing. Over
Oh,
here,
did
the
I get my
oldest-
year right?
I don't even know. It's been a long time. Is it
Thought it was
1642?
1642. Maybe
Probably.
it was
There's a lot happened that year, I find.
1542. Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yeah, it was not. It was 1492. It was like, wait, 1600. They've had like Williamstown was here, Jamestown, Williamsburg, all that stuff was here. I think my ancestors were already here by then too. Yeah, it was way earlier. It was 1492. Oh my God. My brain is like, ouch, third grade was so long ago.
I kind of got I kind of got it right. It sounded sort of like it could be right.
200, I almost said dollars, 200 years here or there, whatever. But anyways, yes, I'm buying all the things, but I don't want to tangent too much because we are wrapping it up. Oh my gosh, we are like the worst about wrapping this up. Zip it up. We'll see you next week. We're talking ghosty fairy shit. We will see you then. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.